we'll just start with like a bit of quick housekeeping. So if you ever have a question, feel free to type it in the chat box and we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. We've also got some delivery vouchers to share around. They're worth $15 and are just like our little way of saying thanks for joining us. Let's share a meal together. So if you'd like one, just post in the chat, or you can also privately message Sabrina or Nick in the Zoom chat. Just also try to remember to stay on mute when you're not talking, because background noises can be quite distracting for everybody. We're also going to have plenty of time for discussion, but please respect people's privacy. We'll assume that this space is public and we are recording, so just keep that in mind. So be aware of what you share in this space. Likewise, if someone shares something personal with you, please keep in mind that it might not be your story to tell without their permission. So today's agenda, if we can just go to the next slide, we'll just give like a brief introduction to consent and consensus, and then we'll go into some breakout room discussions, and then we've got a really fun consent interactive theatre activity, which we'll explain soon, and then we'll close and have questions. So just as a preface, we're not claiming to be experts at all, and we want to give everybody space to draw on all of your experience as well. So we'll have plenty of time for discussion, and we'll also have a go at practicing the ideas of consent and consensus in practice through some fun Zoom theatrics later on. But don't worry, you don't have to perform. We'll all be directing the action together. So first off, I want to introduce all the speakers that are here tonight. We've got Nick, who's helping out with some of the tech. He's also with Galley Rising. Say hi, Nick. Or just give us a wave. Anissa Rogers, who some of you might have met last webinar. She's a keen organiser and has been involved in the Adani Frontline campaign for several years now, I'd guess. Beck Adams, who's been to Camp Bimby many times and helped to build really strong relationships with members of the community there. And Janie will be dropping in later to help with our consent theatre activity, thanks to her many years in the performing arts scene. You might also know her from a recent action at the mine site dressed as a mermaid. Sabrina's also going to be monitoring the chat box, so if you have any questions, or if you'd like a meal voucher, just give her a shout out. So moving on to the next slide. I first came across the concepts of consent and consensus at uni. I moved into a student housing cooperative in 2015, and I think that's the first time that I came across these ideas in practice. It took me a while to get my head around how to use these things and like where they came from, and it was really nice to sort of learn this new way of learning to work together. So I think it's great that we're talking about it, so you can kind of get a chance to get your head around it before you see it in action. In the context that I've experienced the use of consent and consensus, they were used to help groups cooperatively make decisions together in a way that no person or persons have control or power over the group. Rather, they're processes to encourage everyone to participate and make sure that no one who cannot live with a decision is left behind. By using these practices in a group, it doesn't mean that all power or hierarchy dynamics will disappear, but with some time practice, you can effectively use these tools to reduce these imbalances, and I think that they're really worthwhile to learn. So we'll be focusing on the use of consent and consensus decision-making tonight, but consent is also a useful framework for checking in with people on other decisions, such as patient-centered healthcare or sexual consent. So going on to the next slide. Informed consent was originally developed by ethicists in healthcare to ensure that patients had adequate mental capacity and information for them to make the best decisions about their treatment and health. This interpersonal decision-making tool has been adapted by Indigenous people across the world. The decision-making framework of free, prior and informed consent has been used to establish self-determination by empowering Indigenous people with the right to decide their futures. Note the addition of free to the framework, because it's important when faced with complex and difficult decisions. I also note that Adani has never had the free, prior, informed consent. Excuse me, I'm just going to drink. Adani has never had the free, prior consent of the Wangan and Jagalingou traditional owners to build their mine in central Queensland, nor have they gotten free, prior, informed consent from the Adivasi residents in India to build the Godda power station. So, as you can see in the slide, free, prior, informed consent means that there's no manipulation or coercion and the process is self-directed. Prior means that consent is sought sufficiently in advance. Informed means that all information is given, and that consent means a process in which participation and consultation are the central pillars. Camp Bimby, the Adani blockade camp, and other blockade camps use these definitions of free, prior, informed consent to inform consent in consensus decision-making, which is what we'll be talking about next. So at Camp Bimby, consent is used to ensure that everyone's given the right and the opportunity to make the best decisions for themselves. Some examples of when we use it include deciding whether we want to take part in an action, making decisions together that might affect many people living at the blockade, such as big changes with like the kitchen or the garden or something like that. And there's many other circumstances too. It's best to follow through with the whole framework wherever possible, but there can be limitations to time. In particular, the consent process is usually used in meetings where consensus is sought over a particular plan. This leads us to consensus decision-making, which I think is just on the next slide. Yeah. So consensus decision-making is a creative and dynamic way of reaching agreement between all members of a group. Instead of simply voting for an item and having the majority decide, a group using consensus is committed to finding solutions that everyone actively supports or at least can live with. By its definition, consensus means that a decision can't be made against the will of an individual or minority. So consensus encourages everyone to participate and to work together to find solutions to address everyone's concerns. Consensus is used by all kinds of groups around the world, from volunteer groups to cooperatives and local communities, and of course also regions. Of course, it's also used by protest camps and blockades, including Camp Bimby, and was widely used in the Occupy movement. Importantly, this idea is not new. Non-hierarchical societies have existed for centuries, and a great example of this is the 5 nations on the American continent who formed the Haudenosaunee Confederation, which began at least before 1600 and still exists today. So the next slide has a consensus framework. We won't go into this in too much depth, but the basic model is introducing issues to be decided, exploring the idea and asking questions, and trying to address concerns. You look for an emerging proposal that addresses concerns and adds in people's key ideas. You discuss and refine these, and then you test for agreement. And once you have agreement, you have consensus. So at Camp Bimby, we use a lot of hand signals to test for agreement. It's really important at this stage to check that there are no blocks, which is when somebody actually removes their consent from the consensus process. You can also at this stage maybe check with people and see if maybe they still don't like the idea, but they're still okay with it going ahead, or to see if there's like any further concerns or questions that need to be answered. So there are other variations of this process. For example, the use of spokes councils for larger groups to sort of add more layers of the consensus decision-making process, but the basic model that we've outlined today is what's in place at Camp Bimby at the moment. So on the next slide, we've got some hand signals, which are the ones that we always use at Camp Bimby. Do you mind changing? Oh yeah, that's on there. So I want to test with everybody. We might even go to gallery view if that's possible. We're just going to have a quick go at testing for consensus. So at Bimby we use twinkle fingers to do that. It's a really easy way, particularly when everyone's in the same room together, to see how people are feeling about a proposal. So if you're able to, I encourage you to turn on your video. So yeah, pretty much if you agree with something enthusiastically, you've got your twinkle fingers up here. If you're really against the idea, you don't like it, but you can live with it, you do twinkle fingers down. And if you're kind of like in between, or maybe you've got some more questions or concerns, you go in the middle. And if you're really against the idea, you would do this, which means block. So maybe we'll just do like a really quick check, like how's everybody going? Looking pretty good so far, nice. Awesome. So the last thing that I'll mention is facilitation. A good facilitator helps make sure that this process all happens fairly, that time is managed well, and everyone's voice can be heard. Some key skills for good facilitation include staying neutral, listening and summarizing, drawing out quiet voices, and using a variety of tools like straw polls. We won't delve into these techniques today, but we'll share an upcoming facilitation workshop for anyone who's keen. And I'll pass over to Nick about the next discussion.
Cool, thanks. Thanks, that was awesome. And good to recap. We do have a bit of an exercise that might help us get an understanding of how well experienced people are with consensus and consent. If you go into the chat right now, there's a document. Those are the slides that we're actually working off. And if you go to slide number 10, we actually have a bit of a spectrum exercise, which is a really common tool that often gets brought into conversations about consent and consensus, or other scenarios where we're exploring a variety of different ideas. So if you jump in onto that doc and go to slide 10, you can actually move the fruit around and tell us whether you're familiar or comfortable with a particular thing, or unfamiliar or uncomfortable with a particular consent or consensus. So yeah, really encourage you to go onto that doc now. It's in the chat. There's a link there. Jump on there and show us whether you're super comfortable or not with consent, and super comfortable or not with consensus. And that will give us a bit of a good idea of how we can work together on this next part of the webinar. Cool, it's coming together nicely. Seems like a lot of people have more familiarity with the ideas than not, which is going to be great, because I think we were aiming to run this more as an opportunity for us to talk about the lessons that we've learned, the challenges that we've faced, and share some of that with each other. So in the hope of doing that, what we're going to run now is a breakout session, the focus of which will be answering mainly a question of what has been some challenges in using consent or consensus decision making. Hello, everyone. Thanks. I hope that went well. We have a report back. We have some time for report backs, but I'm also conscious that we have 10 groups with, roughly 3 to 4 people in them. So it's a lot of people a lot of groups to get report backs from. I wonder if there was anything that people thought really really was quite meaningful, of the challenges that we face when using consent or consensus. If you want to speak up, go for it. Take yourself off mute. Andy?
Hi, everybody. I'll be brief. It was really interesting because we had two different views. One was very supportive and found a lot of value in the way consensus decision-making is being done at camp. But also there were other views which I thought were really interesting, and they deserve maybe more attention to see how they can be resolved. People mentioned that it is an opportunity, consensus decision-making, for people to be bullied. So like for power wrestle to occur openly even, and for intended violence to occur. So that was quite interesting. I thought we could benefit from discussing that. And also people mentioned that sometimes the twinkle fingers might not quite cut it, because it might result in peer pressure for others to just go along and not encourage dissent.
That's really interesting, especially the first one about the bullying and like being quite intentionally violent in the way that you're acting, the words that you're using, intimidation. I'm wondering if maybe Anissa or some of the others who have a lot of experience with facilitation might be able to talk to some of the methods or techniques that we can use to address that particular concern when consensus is being sought, and we're trying to ensure that we give people an opportunity to have informed consent. Anissa?
Yeah, I think it's a really hard thing, especially when, like, because sometimes it can be easy to spot bullying, and so it can be easy to kind of, I don't know, as a facilitator or as someone in the group, you can kind of, you know, not in a way that's like you're a horrible person for doing this, but trying to like bring it back and understand that these dynamics are happening, and then bring it back and kind of, if somebody's being pressured, then make sure that you're putting that person in the spotlight to decide, or maybe say something like, oh, maybe we should take a break, and then go and like debrief with people. I think it can be especially hard when kind of bullying or manipulation is not so obvious. And unfortunately, as humans, we've developed a lot of ways to kind of consciously and subconsciously manipulate each other. And sometimes we don't even know that we're doing it. So I think it's a really good thing to bring up. And one of the best ways to deal with it is just to practice talking about it openly in a it doesn't always have to be like, it's best if it's not shaming somebody, but just kind of bringing attention to, whoa, you know, there's a lot of peer pressure on this person right now. Like, how about we check in to see how they're feeling? I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts.
I was just going to say, I think it's also, it depends on what kind of groups it's in. If it's in a group that's worked together a lot before and hasn't just come together for this one time, I think it's important to have people who are kind of looking at the dynamics of a group, often like maybe a safer spaces group or like a welfare group, who can like kind of be aware of different dynamics that are going on and try to address things before they turn into big issues during specific meetings or whatever.
And Anna Christie just wrote in the chat about cliques forming, which I think is something that happens everywhere. Humans, we're just naturally, as humans, want to be really close friends with people, and that's really important to sustain us in the really hard work that we're doing. But it kind of needs to be a conversation topic, and like, you know, something that we think about quite a lot, because it can be, you know, it's just like being back in the schoolyard. And it's a really not nice experience, and practice on our inviting to people. I think, Zol, did you have a hand up? Did you want to say something?
I can take you off mute, Sol. There you go.
Good one. I'm the one that brought up bullying, and it was in a situation of 9 camps around a US military base in England. And yeah, there are different ways of dealing with it. We actually dealt with it sort of, which is why I bring it up, because it's still like 30 years later, makes me think. But one of the other situations, I was in at Terania when we stopped the rainforest from being logged in 1979, and one of the wonderful things we had going on there was we had different broke into different groups, all different colors of the rainbow, and we always had the purple group, and they went around and they did all that, talking to people, making sure everyone feels okay, and if there was any stress going down across, amongst people, they would end up helping that person with rescue remedy, of course, and meditation, but also counselling, and it was really good. So
Cool.
just putting that on the table.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a great idea to have those frameworks really well set up to be able to check in with people and follow up, because we often forget that we're not just seeking consensus in a meeting, we're actually working with these people every day, and there's lots of other moments where we're having conversations and sharing information. Maybe that goes as well to Anna Christie's point about cliques, and I heard John talking about the way in which information can be used to run rings around people. Part of, I guess, the bullying aspect as well is that there are hierarchies that form that we don't necessarily recognize. They may be informal, they may be formal, but they have a massive impact on the way in which we carry out consent or seek consent and reach consensus. Andy, there was another thing that you were saying, I can't remember what it was, but I'm not sure if it got addressed there.
I think those were the things that people raised. The twinkle fingers was something else that someone else brought. It's all related. Peer pressure, it's all related. Could I add, or could you guys talk about the value of trust? The more trust we have, isn't it, the less bullying and abuse of power and cliques that will form, and the easier conversations we'll be able to have, perhaps?
Yeah, that's definitely really important. And I also wonder about, like, cliques will naturally form, right? But we just have to trust that these other groups that we're not necessarily a part of have the same goals, intentions, expectations. Maybe I'll stop talking though, and someone else can pick up the thread on trust and how that's important.
Well, for me, this kind of brings back to something I learnt from the Group Work Institute, who came out of this Common Ground, this amazing commune. And it was phrased in this beautiful way of, like, half of the work that you're doing in activism is actually working on your group. Sometimes people divide it into kind of maintenance and tasks. So the maintenance is like making sure that the meeting's running, making sure that the relationships are good, making sure people are happy and included, whereas the tasks are like do the action, call the people, build the lock-on, that sort of thing. And so just really kind of reminding ourselves that it is a huge, in fact, about half of the work that needs to be going into relationships and working out how, I guess dealing with our own emotions and dealing with other people's emotions and the communication around that. Because I think often people can come into activism and just be so excited to go and do. And, a lot of that really important behind the scenes work can get missed. And Anna mentioned recruitment, which is really important. And I think that kind of can bridge the gap between the task and maintenance, because it can be kind of outcome oriented. You need more people. But if you want to do recruitment in a meaningful way, then you're going to, you know, be caring about the people. You're going to be checking in on them. You're going to make sure that, you know, the hierarchies of information are being broken down so that everyone understands what's going on.
I also, just before we get on to the next section, I'm really interested in this this idea that I heard a couple of times about being informed and what it means to actually be informed. I don't know if people have experiences of that or whether they spoke about it in their group that they'd like to share, or maybe some of the facilitators can talk about being informed and being in groups where maybe information is not always. Beck, maybe? Jump in here.
Yeah, I guess kind of related to hierarchies, there can be a kind of, and the clique kind of thing, there can be a lot of like assumed knowledge or cliques that form, which then mean certain people are left out, which can actually have like, it's not a nice social feeling, but also it can have a really bad feeling safety-wise or inclusion-wise, etc. So I think, yeah, like paying a lot of attention to what everyone knows and what information is known by who, etc. It doesn't always have to be that everyone knows all the information, because there's times when there's need to know information. But I think, yeah, everybody being aware of what they're being involved in, everybody being aware of all the information that they need to know is really important and really easy, especially the longer you're in a group or activism. It's kind of pretty easy to forget to do. But yeah, so like constant reminder to keep doing it and learn.
Yeah, I think just like on being informed, and also I think this kind of plays into the whole trust thing as well, is that I think that especially maybe for like people who are newer to activist groups, it's really easy to come into a group or like activist community and like feel quite scared to ask questions because out of fear or worry of like being judged or saying the wrong thing. And I think that's like a really valid thing because yeah, like activists can bite back sometimes if people say or do the wrong thing. And I think like creating that culture of allowing people to make mistakes, allowing people to ask questions, even if we don't necessarily agree with what they're getting at, is really important. And the more that we can do that, like vulnerability equal, like being able to be vulnerable around people is trust building, right? Like if you can be vulnerable around someone and be respected by them while in your vulnerability, then that's going to create trust. So, and you're going to be informed while you're doing that. Yeah. Ask questions.
What?
I just said we should ask questions and we should answer people's questions respectfully.
True. Very true. And I think maybe there's something else as well there that's about facilitation and being, for us to be constantly learning about our facilitation so that we can improve our self-facilitation and the way in which we are facilitated in groups. And this is as good a moment as any for Anissa to plug the Skill Up 2020 facilitation trainings that are taking place.
Sure. Seamless, Nick. Yeah, so there's a bunch of us that are involved in Frontline Action on Coal and other groups that have been running some facilitation trainings because we kind of realised that that's one of the most important skills, and there aren't actually that many kind of free trainings going around. So we've put online, in the email out, we'll put some links in, but we're running a kind of series of intro and then advanced. And it's basically, just learning about facilitation, consensus, and really trying to practice because you really learn these things by practicing. So we really invite you to come along, and especially if you have a group that you work with that you think would benefit from this, we're really excited to run a training just with your group because it can be extra amazing to do the learning together and unpack these things in the group that you're actually going to be doing your facilitation and consensus. So please, you can email Galilee Rising and they'll get us in touch. So please, and if anyone has some good facilitation skills you want to help us run them, also get in touch.
Cool. Janie, I think I saw that you are here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Janie's going to run an awesome session for us where we can explore a bit more consent.
Yeah. We're doing that now?
We're doing
Hi,
it now.
hi, everyone. I'm Janie. I'm sorry I haven't been here for the whole time. I had a prior commitment, but here I am. So, yeah, we thought it could be a useful and fun way to explore this idea of consent by doing some Zoom theatre of the oppressed or forum theatre, so my background is as a theatre maker, and this thing that we're going to explore today, it's basically, it's called the Theatre of the Oppressed. It came from, originated in Brazil by this guy called Augusto Boal in the 70s. And basically it's a way of using role play to practice in kind of a safe space to practice trying to enact change in human relationships. So obviously it can be applied for many different contexts. Say conflict resolution workshop scenario is where I've used it in the past. But we thought it could be an interesting way to look at consent. So what we'll be doing is some of the facilitators are going to play out a scenario, very simple kind of scenario that might take place, around an action. And what we want to be listening for is like what's happening consent-wise in this scenario and just sort of tune your ears to what you think's going on. I think one reason it's useful to play these things out through a role play is often when we're in communication with people in groups or even one-on-one, there's a lot of things going on more than even is being said or not being said, like unspoken hierarchies that may be at play in terms of, hierarchies of knowledge or experience or age, gender, race, class, they can sometimes be unsaid things that influence how people are making decisions and if people are able to actually consent to what's happening. And I guess the other thing that this can be useful how this can be useful is sometimes it can be difficult to assert our needs in different situations, especially depending on what hierarchies might be at play. And so this way of role-playing can be a good way to practice being assertive, speaking up, asking for what we need, or potentially doing that for somebody else in the community if we see that maybe their needs aren't being addressed in a way that is healthy and good. So let's start. So what we're going to do is we're just going to play through this simple scenario, and then we're going to have a chat about what's going on. So first of all, I'll do a bit of a setup. So basically, the protagonist is Jessie, which Jessie, can you wave your hand? Sad. So Jessie is considering how they want to be involved in an action with Frontline Action on Call. So Jessie has just arrived at camp and has been swept up in the planning for an action and hopes to stop work on the rail corridor where Adani contractor BMD is working right now, actually happening in real life. So Jessie has just arrived and has been following the campaign for a long time, is really excited to make an impact. And the number of bunnies, people who are willing to have a greater risk of arrest, the number of bunnies at camp is actually low. And so Jessie feels a compulsion to step up and support the cause. So the roles we have here, we've got Jessie, Sab is Jessie, and then Nick is going to be like a camp person at camp, Anise is the camp facilitator, and Beck's also there, just also at the meeting. Okay, so actors, take us away.
Okay, I feel like I need to take off my beanie because we're at camp and it's so warm because it's central Queensland.
Oh yeah, good context.
Beautiful.
It's hot. Mangoes.
So as everyone was just here, we've just heard the last week's Scout report. And so as we've discussed, now is the time for us to work out what is possible in taking action, given that information that we just got. So who would like to start? Oh, yep, Nick.
Yep, I reckon that considering that we heard all of that information last week, and we know that we need to make a big impact at the moment. I think what we need to do is just get out there. We need to stop the work because, like, to be honest, this might be our last chance. This is a pivotal moment. I think we just really need to keep things moving. And most of all, I think the rest of the Sabadani movement don't even realize that. So we've just got to make it big and bold, and we've just got to stop the work. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. I'm hearing that call to action and I'm really excited by it. But I just remember from our last conversation, we know that we don't really have many bunnies. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue. Oh, yep, Nick.
Yeah. So look, I think that's, a good consideration, but I think this is a really important moment. As I said before, really pivotal. So, I mean, I think it would be great to see maybe some way, maybe some of us can step up. I don't know, like, who have we got here?
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe I'll put a call out if there's anybody here who's willing to be a bunny or a bilby, an arrestable person. If there's anyone here willing.
I can.
Oh, Jessie, great, cool.
Great. Yeah,
amazing.
Awesome. So good, so good. Excellent. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Great, excellent.
So let's plan this action.
Okay, good. So that was us end scene. So now I'll throw, yes, very good. Round of applause. Putting the act in actorvist. Okay, so, but now I'm going to throw it out to the crowd, to the Zoom audience. What happened? What did you hear? What did you see happening in that situation? And just, if you have a thought, just unmute your microphone and speak.
I heard some sort of action
Or just
being accelerated at a quick pace that seemed separate to the main group or unbeknownst to affiliated groups, and a lot of enthusiasm and rashness.
Okay, yep. So we've got enthusiasm, quick decisions, rashness, and John has said in the chat, Nick was enthusiastic but without much detail or direction. What else did you hear? Yes, Siobhan.
I really sensed like a lot of pressure and not much space to air concerns or to talk about what's involved before people are signing up, like and that's the informed consent. It's like, what does this actually involve? Like, what am I agreeing to? It's more just like, it's urgent, who can help? And it's just that pressure created.
Yeah. So do you think that Jessie was, in answer to your question, Anna, this was a little script that we prepared. So do you think that Jessie was informed or no? So this is what we're going to do now. What do you think, what could Jessie do? So we're going to replay that scenario again. But the way this works is that I want you to interrupt the scene when you hear something happening that you want to change. So actually now the responsibility is on all of you to change this situation. But we cannot, in this game, the rules of the game, the rules make the game. In this game, you cannot change the behaviour of Nick's character or Anissa's character, but you can change the behaviour of Jessie or Beck, who was just sitting there. So what do you think, I mean, we can just start to like think about it now. What do you think Jessie or Beck could have done differently? Was there anything they could do?
Ask questions, you know, just, you know, take it down several notches to soak in not just the top of the pyramid, just the whole base as well. Ask questions and pros, cons. Give me half an hour, well, you know, a bit of time to think.
Yeah. Yeah, so ask more questions, request more time. Okay, cool. So now we're going to do it again, but this time you guys... Oh, sorry, Nick, yeah?
Zol, did you have something?
I felt that Jessie would have benefited from... Oh, you don't want to know what Jessie's got to do.
No, that's we do want to. Jessie's the one who can act.
Right. Well, I think Jessie could have asked some questions about what she was getting herself into, but it alarms me that there was nobody watching in a position to jump in and counsel Jessie in that direction.
Yeah. So actually, if I just sort of, if what I'm hearing you suggest is that actually it's also not only her responsibility, but the other people there to sort of take care of that. Cool. So what we're going to do now is, now that you have the power to change this situation, unlike in life, well, no, like in life, you also have the power in life, but unlike in life, you don't necessarily get to rewind. We're going to rewind. We're going to replay that scenario. And when you hear something that you want to change, call out stop. So just unmute your microphone and call out stop. And if you don't call out stop, it's just going to happen exactly the same, and that can't happen. So let's practice calling out stop. So Nick's going to unmute everyone, I think, and then on 3, I want you to...
Whoa, simmer down. Hold on.
What?
There we go.
Simmer down. So on 3, I want you to blow out your microphone. So, and say stop. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, stop. Stop. Right.
Stop.
Stop. Stop.
Stop. Good.
Stop.
Great. And let's do it all together. And I'm sure it'll be really weird and delayed, but let's try anyway. So on 3, 1, 2, 3, stop.
Stop.
Great. All right. So we're going to play it again. When you see something you want to change, call out. Okay, so off you go, Nick and Anissa and Beck and Sab.
So as we just heard from the Scout report back, let's work out what we're going to do, what action we're going to take. Do we have any?
Yes, Zol's saying stop. Can you unmute your microphone, please, Zol?
Why did I say stop? I didn't hear what had happened to the Scouts report.
Yes, you didn't hear the Scouts report. So what could Jessie do in this moment?
Go over the main points.
So...
Oh, Jessie.
Yeah, Jessie, yeah.
Ask what the hell the person's talking about.
Yeah. So I've got a proposition for you, Zol. I'd like to replay the scene again, and could you play the role of Jessie and do what you think she could do in that situation?
Yeah, Zol, you can do it.
Everyone's with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So let's start again. Okay, so Sab, you've been cut from the show. Sorry.
Sorry, Sab.
Hollywood's brutal. All right, so let's start again.
Okay, so everyone knows the Scout report back, so let's work out what action we're going to take. Oh, yep, Jessie?
I'm sorry, I was off at the toilet and I missed the Scout report. Can you go through the main points, please?
Okay. Yeah, we could, but maybe we'll just do that later. Maybe we'll just go to the end. Like, we'll just put that off to the end. We're like, you know, action time is now. Let's just plan the action and someone can fill you in.
No, you can't say do that later. There's a few things seriously before. Can I have a comment now?
Yeah, I think you are, like, you're just now in the meeting. Let's go.
Yes.
Okay. You can't just say, oh, let's talk about that later. And in fact, there is there's another step that needs to be taken, which is that we haven't actually quite ascertained who am I in relation to you, Anissa, who's asking it. Am I a first-time member at the camp? Are you going to reveal who is your scout and exactly where they've gone to someone who has just arrived at camp? And I think those two steps actually would have to be in before you would even start to discuss what the actual intel was and how you got it. That's all.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I guess that's what you were trying to do, wasn't it, Zol?
I'd just arrived from the toilet.
Exactly. All right, so let's give Zol a round of applause. Bravo.
Thank you.
So, Anna, do you want to try now as Jessie?
Oh, no, I couldn't, no. I would, are you suggesting how I would go about?
Well, I mean, this is a place to try stuff.
Okay, all right. So, okay, look, everyone, it's so fantastic that you are even here today, but we really have come to hand some really serious news and a really big opportunity for us to actually do something very visible and really impactful. So we've heard this kind of thing. Look, so-and-so, I know this is your first time here.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Have you done non-violent?
Sorry to interrupt you, Anna. I think I wasn't clear. You should play the role of Jessie. So let's start the scene from the beginning. Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, hang on.
So I guess the reason why we do that is that sometimes it can be...
So I'm the new recruit. I'm the person being recruited.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So
okay.
what could you do to change the situation for yourself in that position? So let's start from the top, and Anissa will reset.
Okay, starting from the top, I think
Anissa will start the meeting off, and you'll just be then when you want to address that, speak up.
Okay, go on. Yeah.
Okay, so we just heard last week's report back, and let's discuss what actions we're going to take. Who wants to talk?
Yeah, I'm really interested, but I've got no idea. How many days do I have to be away? Is anyone else going up? Because I'm not sure my car's going to make it. I really, really want to come along, but do you know anyone else who's coming up? Oh, yeah, maybe that's the sort of thing.
Those are some really good questions also, Jessie. I'll just go to Nick now. Nick, do you have an answer?
No, I feel like maybe we can get to the details after we've worked out what the broad strokes of what we're doing is, because where we're going specifically, I guess, is more related to the actual plan itself and where along the line we might be going, what we might be saying.
Stop.
If we can get to a point where...
No, stop.
Okay, am I still facilitating, or Janie, now it's stopped? I think Jennifer stopped.
I think what we're doing is Anna is trying to, and Anna is Jessie. So we'll hold off on other stops. So
I feel very uncomfortable about Nick's approach. I really do.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Tell us more. Why?
Why? Because you're not being totally transparent. And you're also trying to dismiss my concerns. I myself, and I've got 3 girlfriends who will come up, and these people are like serious. These are serious people who will come up in their own steam with their own good car. And so naturally I want to find out a few facts, like where are we staying and how many nights away? Just a few basic stuff like that. And look, actually now not in character, but the reality is that is the questions that everyone asks.
Great. That's awesome. Thanks, Anna.
But look, the other thing, not to diminish the thing that people will come along, and then a lot of people who are really going through angst because they want to come, they want to be supportive, but they've got a job, they're really scared of that job thing. I think is a big motivator that still, even though the rules changed about how much of your record can be used or shared, nevertheless, I think it's still something that people worry about.
No, absolutely. Thanks for that. And I really enjoyed the how assertive you were. And yeah, round of applause for Anna, Christy, Jessie. Oh, there's that Zoom applause. It's so cute. So now let's look at this from another way. So I think it came up in the very first discussion, this idea of that other people in that meeting maybe should also have a responsibility to take care of that situation. Because I think it's often the case, so we've had two people have a go at being Jessie, but it can sometimes be the case that you might be at a meeting and you see someone in the position of Jessie, and maybe that Jessie isn't assertive and not able to articulate their needs, or maybe even foresee the fact that they don't have enough information. So what could you do? Let's play it again, and does someone want to try being a bystander to that situation and seeing what you would do if you saw that happening? How could you intervene and help change that situation? I can't see everyone on the screen at the same time, but does anyone want to put their hand up to have another crack? I think it'll be our final round as a bystander.
Rosie has her hand up.
Rosie!
This is, where are we? This is very scary, so, because I'm being very brave doing this, so.
But I remember, Rosie, we climbed up a tree together and sang a duet in the boughs of the gum tree, so this is nothing. All right, so that was so nice. Okay, wasn't that nice? Okay, sorry everyone. Okay, so let's we'll do it again, and this time, Sab, you're back in. Beck, you'll be supplanted by Rosie, and we'll just see what could the bystander do in this situation. All right, let's take it from the top.
Okay, once again, we've just heard that Scouts report back, and let's have a conversation about what action we're going to take. Does anybody have any ideas about actions? Yep, Nick?
Yep, I reckon we should just slam it down their throat. I reckon we need to get out there. We need to hit all the notes. We need to do it quick. Hard and fast is the motto here, I reckon. We've got an opportunity and we need to absolutely take it when we can.
Stop.
Oh, well, we're not going to call stop just yet, Lourdes, because no, but thanks for, you're right. Nick's probably, needs some addressing. That behaviour needs addressing. But Rosie's going to have a crack from inside. So, yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Okay, thanks for that, Nick. I can hear your enthusiasm. Sounds like, we've just got to go for it. So what ideas, I think we need to find some bilbies, some people who need to get arrested, so to make this happen. Yep, Nick?
Yeah, as I was saying before, I think very pivotal moment. So I know that we've been low on capacity recently, but I think this might be some time for people to maybe reframe the way that they've been thinking about their involvement, and should maybe start to, step up perhaps. The rest of the stuff of Adani movement's behind us. We need to get this going. We need to, I don't know if, people who've come here recently maybe have something to say. I don't know.
Oh yes, Rosie, did you have a hand?
Sorry, am I supporting Jess? So do I wait for Jess's response?
Yeah, it's up to you.
Oh, okay. So I can just come in whenever.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put your head in, Nick. Just.
Nice.
How about a bit more information, because nobody can make a decision so quickly, and I know Jess is not very familiar with group. This is her first time, so I think maybe Arissa could provide a bit more information about what exactly would be involved and what other options there are other than going straight in for a frontline action right now.
Rosie, thank you. I was getting steamrolled along with Nick, and you've really pulled me back, and I can see clearly now.
Yay! That's great. Well done, Rosie, and everyone who played a part and also watched. So, yeah, I guess what's to say? I think something, we don't have heaps of time to now, like, obviously this is something we could talk about for a long time, but just a quick sort of thing I'd like to say is that I guess people in the role, like of Anissa and Nick in that situation, you know, we're not necessarily being highly critical of them, but rather sort of it's raising an awareness of like anyone could be facilitating a particular situation that doesn't allow for consent if, you know, you're just sort of not aware. And yeah, so I guess the purposes of this is just to raise a bit of awareness and then practice those skills of potentially speaking up. And yeah, anything anyone wants to say briefly? I know it's already 8:15 and you guys have something else planned, but anything anyone wants to say, like quick, like burning comment? Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Go for it, Des.
Yeah, can you just like turn up and say, hi, I'm Jessie. Can you tell me what you want me to do and where to go and when it's going to start? Just direct me right now because I'm ready to go. Can you just do that?
Yeah. Beck, Lauren, do you want to answer that question?
Okay. Yeah, I think a great thing to do is learn while you're there and be open to learning. So I think lots of people have come up to these new situations. Like I love it. I love it when people who haven't come to these kind of things before come and have a real like openness and willingness to learn. I think that's awesome.
So where do I go?
I think as long as it's explained, like
their library, is it? Their library? Do I have to go and sit and read, or do I go to the Blockade, or do I go to the Tops, or do I go to the kitchen? Where do I go?
Go to the Blockade. I mean, that's the point of these this group. This, you know, the Blockade is where a lot of this learning is taking place, and it's not just about stopping the rail line being built. It's not just about stopping the box cut, which seems to be progressing relatively quickly, and contractors are coming on board and all that sort of stuff. But you know, there's an opportunity there to learn all of this stuff and really develop your understanding of what it means to be part of a progressive society, and you know, picking up skills for consensus and consent. And yeah, I think, you know, if you want to get out there and you want to do something, definitely do it. But also, just remember, sorry, I've got something in my throat, that there's a lot of history, and we have to be sure that what we're doing pays homage to that history and the lessons that have come before.
If I could just say something to that, that's great. What you say, it just reminds me of being on a film set as an extra. There's hundreds and hundreds of people, there's the directors, there's lots of money involved, and then there's the main scene, and you have to become part of the scene without stuffing it up, without causing a delay, without, you know, breaking anything and hurting yourself. So, you know, the organisers need to be really, it's important, I'm supposed to be supportive.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. But as an extra, that's what it feels like. You know, that's, I'm coming on and there's this big thing about to happen, and it covers everything: history, money, and people's lives. So yeah. Yeah,
and I think that's a really important part of the consensus model as well, is that you're making sure that people feel like they're aware of all of the moving parts as much as they can be, so that they can choose to step in or out where they'd like to. I don't think it's ever on anyone to be, you know, a loud, boisterous, active member. But back to what Andy was saying before about trust, is that, you know, if we have the information for us to be able to process things that are going on around us, we can trust the people around us to be making decisions, and we don't always need to be saying everything that everyone else is saying. You know, we can rely on each other and trust each other, and we can take action together, you know, mass peaceful protest, using the structures around consensus and for us to be able to give free, prior and informed consent. Do others want to comment on that as well?
I think there were a couple of other hands up about I'm not sure if it's Elaine and Mitch. Elaine, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, like, I've been up to Maules Creek and I've been up to the Adani camp. One of the things I think we need to be careful of is about using jargon, and jargon's very exclusive to new people. One of the things, now I've been to those things, I know what a bunny is, but the first time I thought, what, it's a bunny. Now tonight I heard a bilby, and I said to Russell, what's a bilby? Still don't know what a bilby is. So there's a lot of this terminology that goes on, and you sit and you listen to a group talking about actions and things. The other thing is that right at the other end of the extreme, the thing I learned about at Maules Creek from one of the guys before an action was something really basic. Like, to me, the drive out to the Adani site from the camp was 5 hours. When am I going to have a pee, for goodness sake? No one talked about that. And I felt embarrassed, being the oldest member in the group, to say, excuse me, are we going to have a pee stop on the way? Basic things like that. And then to tell you what's going to happen when you're out there. And our experience at the Adani's campsite, at the Blockade itself, was very much on that level, where there were disasters around the peace stop, where one girl went off into the Adani land and got taken by the police because she was having a pee on Adani's land. Well, that should have all been sorted out. I ended up having a pee and doing a moona to the what are they? The security security camera, because I didn't know there was a security camera up there. Like, things like that, I think, are very basic that should be discussed, and we shouldn't be afraid to ask the questions, and we shouldn't be afraid to actually tell people about it. So it's two extremes there for me as to what we've got to be careful about with people coming into the camp. That's Shannon.
Did you say there was someone else, Anissa?
Yeah, Mitch had a hand up. Thanks, Elaine.
I was just going to add too, it was touched on as well, that I think we threw Nick's character under the bus a bit there. He was completely, from my point of view, unaware of his behaviour. So I think you can definitely be too assertive and then accidentally escalate things, which might not need to go down that path. So I think it's just really important that we're careful with how we pull people up, which we have touched on before. But yeah, it was just brought to my attention then that we're all kind of anti-Nick's character, and Nick's character had more enthusiasm than anyone else, and that's what it needs. So yeah, just something to bring up.
Totally. And I think that's it. And it's not to say, like, just to demonize like someone who's acting like that, because I think we can all be in that situation where we might be creating the conditions for someone to maybe not be fully informed, or like without being aware, rather than they're just like he's just like a bad guy. But yeah, and I think you're right. I think we do have to deploy tact when addressing that as well.
I wouldn't really tell him to pull his head in real life.
But if you did, I'd like to watch, but no.
I mean, I would appreciate the comment. You know, I think it's about familiarity, right? Like, you're obviously familiar enough to be able to say, "Oi, pull your head in." Yeah, but you know, these are all really important things that we're learning and we're working on together. And I think the camp is always changing, and who's there is changing, and you know, it's sessions like this and ongoing conversations that we can have that allow us to address concerns and move beyond some of the more problematic and difficult behaviour that we have around consent and consensus. Zol?
Yep. I'd just like to step back a bit and acknowledge Elaine for your contribution. What you said was really vitally important. That we actually look after people who don't know what's going on. And yeah, it can end up with really sticky situations, and it's, you know, all kinds of situations can develop out of not actually communicating clearly. So I, for one, just really want to thank you for your contribution a moment ago. Thank you.
Cool, yeah, thanks. And yeah, definitely want to reiterate that. It's really important that we're checking in with with people and their needs and making sure that we're learning from that. Siobhan, and then maybe we can do the last 5 minutes.
Very quick. I just, also want to thank Elaine, because for me that really speaks to not just consent, but like that broader thing that has been touched on in this discussion on maintenance and like looking after people's needs and looking after, like, you know, in the hierarchy of needs, like are people hungry, and, you know, like are people feeling well and physically well, and even like, you know, you guys providing the food voucher option tonight. It just speaks to the importance of like maintaining the health and well-being of the community, and that's like the maintenance work that goes along underneath the action that Anise was talking about before.
Great, thanks for that. And I guess that's a good segue, because the last bit of this webinar is a bit of a take-home project. So I'll just share screen again. What we thought would be a fun exercise is wait, does that work? Can people see that? I'm just scrolling through the slides.
You had it before.
Is it there now?
No, now it's consensus decision making.
Oh, okay.
And signals. But it was there just before.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Great. Cool. So Camp has a very well-resourced cookbook, yes, that people are constantly adding to. And we thought, as a fun consensus take-home challenge, is with whoever you are with at the moment, or maybe in the next week or two with the with restrictions easing, you've got a dinner party planned, and I'd like to challenge you in a group of people to pick 3 of these items that are commonly found at camp and create a recipe and send it to us. We'll make a thread on our Facebook page, and whatever recipe you come up with, we're really keen to hear about it, and we can put into practice when we go to camp. But the idea is that you're practicing a scenario where maybe 2 people like eggplant and 1 person likes kangaroo, and so, but the 2 people who like eggplant, you know, don't like kangaroo, and you've got to manage all of those different needs. Yeah, right, exactly. So maybe someone will be like, no, definitely not kangaroo. It's harmful to the ecosystem that we're trying to protect. So we'll send that around as well in our follow-up email. But we thought maybe that would be a fun way to continue thinking about consensus and seeking consensus and using the framework. You could even take the framework out and have it at the table with you whilst you're thinking about the recipe, and make sure you're going through the stages of seeking consensus, of getting consensus in a meeting. But that's as much as we've got, and we're really grateful to have everyone on, and thanks to our facilitators who have jumped on to help out. Mostly Galilee Rising is there's just 4 of us, and it's 2 two of them are away at the moment, so it's mostly just Minna and I. But we're really grateful to see everyone on, and our next webinar is going to be really interesting. It's going to be with Claire Land, who wrote Decolonizing Solidarity. Siobhan, who has been making some comments tonight, is going to facilitate that, along with Edie Shepherd from Original Power, and Chris Twining, who's had a long history decolonizing health workers in Western Victoria. So that'll be a really great conversation. Really looking forward to seeing you there. And if you want to hang around and keep chatting, we're going to stay on the line for another 15 minutes or so, but anyone else is welcome to leave if they feel like